Hello, and welcome back to the Am I Successful podcast? Because maybe what you wanted to be when you grew up is not really working out, and now you're trying to figure out what you actually want to be when you grow up. Well, this podcast is for you because I have been there. I think I got to my early 30s and was like, what am I doing with my life? And if you've ever had that thought, then 100% this podcast is for you. And the thing that I'm going to share with you today is a little bit woo woo, but B, also very linked to the work of Tony Robbins. So, Tony Robbins is a bit of a master, so we should all take lessons from him. So, as I mentioned, my early 30s, I started to literally question everything. It didn't help that I was also, I guess, going through burnout, going through a divorce, and there was a lot of things happening in my life. And I started to do a bit of Googling, as you do, started to do a little bit of soul searching, and I found a thing called the Saturn Return. Actually, no, I'm just remembering exactly where I found it. My boss at the time said to me, have you ever had a look at the astrological event called the Saturn Return, which apparently happens every 29.5 years, apparently, around that period of time, and it usually lasts about 2 to 3 years. So it brings in intense challenge, it makes you review your life, and it kind of is like this coming of age thing every sort of 30 years. So apparently it happens around your 30s and apparently happens around your 60s. And it usually lasts a few years. So what happens is you'll eventually start questioning every single thing in your life. So no big deal. I mean, who am I? Is this relationship right? Is this job right? Could I be doing things better? Should I play a different sport? Should I switch from wine to beer? Should I my hair blonde? Should I do any of these things? And what happens is you start to make big decisions and then you start to become, I guess, more responsible for the decisions that you're starting to make, but you're also needing to embrace growth. Because even though it's really fucking terrifying sometimes to grow, at this point in your life, because you're questioning everything, you then get to choose some new and exciting things that are going to happen. So it's going to happen anyway. So you may as well lean in, right? And luckily for me, I was going through a pretty shitty year. So 2020 was a pretty shitty year for everybody. And mind you, I was about 34 when this sort of thing happened. So I am well into my Saturn return, if not somewhere towards the end. And mind you, already in my Saturn return years, I'd already thought I was going to quit being a lawyer. I already started and completed an MBA. I went on a life-changing trip to Scotland, which we will talk about in another episode. I had changed relationships at this point. Yeah. I had lost some of the most important relationships in my life. I had gained the most important relationship in my life with myself, but also with my new husband. And shit was just getting crazy. It was all sort of changing. And during this period, so this 2020 year, in the lead up to, I guess this was probably the pinnacle of my Saturn return, or the timing when I was going sort of through into a new job, my first big kind of management job. COVID hit, going through a divorce, and it was 2020. It was a bit of a shit show. Everyone knows 2020 was a bit of a write-off. But what I listened to in that year, and I strongly believe that you are what you listen to. And so if you're listening to shit all the time, then your brain can only think about, negative things. But if you are constantly listening to things that are helping you broaden your horizons, are helping you acknowledge that there are other ways of thinking, are helping you to create better pathways and think of better ways to do things, then that's how your brain's going to think. Anyway, so Tony Robbins. So I found this video from Tony Robbins, and I think this is around post the time that he did that documentary called I Am Not Your Guru. And sometimes you will hear me say that during the podcast. I'm definitely not your guru, but he did this this documentary, and I was obsessed with this documentary. And so I started listening to lots of videos. And in this one video, he essentially said something that literally changed my 2020. It flipped things around. And it was probably just at a time where I needed to hear that. I needed to get out of my own fucking way. And all he said was change your story, change your life, right? Seems really, really simple. So change your story, change your life. And what that essentially meant for me in that moment was I am not going to allow the events that have happened of this year to to be the story of the rest of my life. Now, I can choose to essentially become a spinster in my 30s, be single, run around, drink too much alcohol, work in a very, very burnt out career, and keep on getting screamed at by clients that were really unsure of what they were doing because COVID was crazy and I was working in immigration or in support of migrants. So it was a very difficult year, but I decided that at that point, this was not going to be my story. And I started on this journey of, I guess, self-discovery. And this amazing lesson was change your story, change your life. So we are all given the same hours in a day, the same minutes in an hour, the same days in a week, all of these things. And we're all given access, essentially. If you have an internet connection, you have access to the world now. You have access to amazing resources. And one of the other things that Tony Robbins says is, I've tried everything in inverted commas, but if you had tried everything, then something probably would have worked by now, right? So I've tried to lose weight. I've tried everything. It hasn't worked. I've tried everything. I tried to get a job. Hasn't worked. All of these things, right? And I know that this, I'm obviously, again, looking at this through rose-colored glasses. That is how I roll. That is what I do. That is literally the premise of this podcast. But when he says change your story, change your life, the reality is if you can start telling a different story, then you're putting out different energy into the universe. You're having different conversations. You're talking to different people. And it's these micro little steps that you're taking daily that are going to make things change. I was listening to a book earlier today, and the book is called How Little Becomes a Lot: The Art of Small Changes for a More Meaningful Life by Eric Zimmer. So again, I come back to the benefit of micro actions. Now, obviously right now in this moment, if you're in a bit of a shitty position, like no money, bad relationship, or any relationship in a job that you hate, something like this, you can't just necessarily change overnight, but you can take micro actions to start to change your story. And the first person that you need to change your story with is you. So you are your biggest critic. You are your biggest distraction. You are your biggest roadblock. And if you can't start to tell yourself a different story, then nothing is ever going to fucking change. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And if nothing changes, then you can't change your story and you can't change your life. Now, super dramatic, I know, but that's exactly how I got through my 2020. Change your story, change your life. And that's how I decided that I went and started a business. That's how I decided I didn't want to do that business anymore. That's how I ended up in a new amazing marriage. That's how I ended up living in an area that I completely love, somewhere that I only dreamed about when I was younger. That's how I ended up starting a podcast and changing the title 7 episodes in. That's just how shit has rolled since I had that lesson. So change your story, change your life. I'm going to link that video down in the show notes. It's a very short video. I think it was only about 3 or 5 minutes or something like this. But what I want you to take away from this episode is, first, change your story, change your life, particularly if you're going through a period of change. And I was speaking to another friend this morning, and it definitely feels like there's a lot of this going on this year. 2026 seems to be the year for change, and maybe big change as well. And it's this questioning of between this, like around 30 is your Saturn return, but I think you start growing up between the ages of 40 and 50, like really growing up, and you start to consider, okay, I've got a whole nother lifetime ahead of me. What the fuck am I doing now? What do I want life to look like? How are things going to change? What is going to be different? What are my values? What are my purpose? What are my goals? And you get to have a whole nother lifetime, but with the experiences, the goals, the intentions, the values, the purpose, the things that you've already identified, you get to go again. And I guess so, if you want to go again, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So if you don't do anything differently, then you're just going to keep on going around doing the same thing again. Then your next lifetime, so the next 40, 50 years, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be same. But if you can tap into that energy of the Tony Robbins video of around change your story, change your life, even if it's in micro fucking steps, one tiny little thing every day, then I know that it will, because I've lived it, I've done it, I've been here, been there, and I've moved through it. And I'm not saying that I'm a perfect human now, and I'm not saying I am, the most amazing person on the planet or anything like that. I'm 100% not saying that. All I'm saying is there was a bit of a shitty story going on. Changed the story, met a new husband, and now I'm, living in a location that I could only have dreamed of, recording a podcast and mentoring other young solicitors to be the best version that they want to be. So look, I must say that kind of adopting this mindset has changed me, changed my life. That was the episode for today. So change your story, change your life. I'm going to link the Tony Robbins video down below. If someone needs a boot in the bum because they are kind of can't get it out of their own way, can't see, the forest for the trees, can't see the what's ahead of them, or can't commit to any big dreams just because of all the bullshit that they're going through, then maybe this episode is for them. I would love for you to share it with someone that needs it, or leave a comment down below of, something that has, changed your story. I would love, love, love to hear from you. I thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. My name is Rachael Karlyl, and I am the host of Am I Successful Yet? Where we are reframing success through rose-colored glasses, because just because you wanted to be something when you grew up, it doesn't mean that you have to do that forever. And so success is going to be different for different seasons of your life. And that's what we talk about on this podcast. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. And I will see you on the next episode of the Am I Successful podcast next week. Thank you.